Hi guys. Um, I just wanted to check in with you all because today has been a pretty I'm sure it's been a quieter day on social media for a lot of people. People are taking time to reflect and to think about the bigger issues going on in America right now. And I just wanted to say that today I spent some time just reading about different cases of violence against Black men and women that were murdered by cops. And it's really sad. Nobody should not feel safe in America. And I'm really heartbroken that this is the reality that we live in 2020. Given that, my parents lived through the civil rights movement, and that was supposed to be, a turning point for so many people, and it just feels like not much has changed. So, I would just encourage all of you to consider, learning how to be a better friend and friend or coworker or citizen to anybody that's any sort of racial minority or, ethnic minority, whether they're people that are LGBTQ plus, everyone. We need to be kinder to everyone. And my job can be really challenging because what I do obviously is I look at stories and I cover stories, and I often cover stories that are very hard topics to cover, that are emotional, that get people charged up. This Huxley case has got me very physically drained, just because so many of you are reaching out. It's I feel like there's this weight of so many different things right now. There's the weight of the George Floyd's senseless murder. I was really excited though because the state of Minnesota actually filed a civil rights charge against the Minneapolis Police Department today. And they are charging the department with violating the civil rights of African American men and women, which will require a lot. And they're going to look at how much the policies, procedures, and everything played a part in it, and how the police union has covered up and allowed this to happen. One of the biggest obstacles, if you're not familiar with Minneapolis, that has been in actually bringing justice to our people that are killed is that our police union makes it damn near impossible for the police to actually be prosecuted. And I don't care. I understand that police need to be protected, but no union or occupation should ever put someone in a position where they are infallible or untouchable. And essentially what our police union has made is our police officers are untouchable and never held accountable. And that's toxic. And we shouldn't have that. No union should seek to protect its people over the safety of everyone else. No union should ever be covering up bad behavior because it's protecting one of their own. That's what gangs do. I mean, it's no different than criminal behavior, covering up for crimes. We should not be covering up for crimes. Police unions should not be covering up for crimes. So if you really want to know where, part of this stuff needs to start with is looking at these unions, because the unions make it impossible. They will find a million reasons, and they can fund the defenses of these police officers to a point where they get off. They all get off. So in this case, big things are they were all fired, so the police union will not represent them at all. They don't have access to police union rights. Minneapolis people are calling for the resignation of the president of the union for police officers in Minneapolis, which I think is what should happen. I think he should step down. I think for 10 years, this man has been allowing racism, systemic racism, and the needless abuse and murder of black men and women. And it's so prevalent here. I don't think people really realize that, because they see Minnesota and they're like, oh, it's Minnesota nice. It's not. If you're white, it's fine. Otherwise, if you're not, you are not. It's not nice. And I hate that. I hate that about where I live. I've always hated that about where I lived. I've always wanted to live in a place where people accepted everyone and treated everyone. And they do want to change things. They definitely want to make this a safer place. I feel like they want to make improvements. I'm sad that it had to come to this to get to that realization, because I think a lot of our residents, including me, have known this for a very long time. I don't think people realize how systemic the racism is here. It's thick, and people are racist and they don't even realize they're racist. And that's the part that I think is scary. Because you will have people here, no matter what, defending the police officers, because they all assume wrongly that every single black person is a criminal. And that's just not how it is. And things really need to change here. And I hope they clean house. And they appointed Keith Ellison yesterday, which is good. Keith Ellison is, interestingly, he was one of the very first Muslim in the House of Representatives, and he was one of the very first to be elected, and then also like take his oath on the Torah. He's also a person of color. And so I feel like Keith is a good person to manage this case. I think the reason why everything is so slow for charges is because of the way that the system is set up here, and the way that the unions protect these guys, the way the other officers protect these guys, the fact that, the sad thing here is that not only are people of color treated like shit, but women are too. And that's the shitty part about Minnesota, is that men, unless you're a white man, Minnesota isn't for everyone. And that's kind of the sad reality. And I'm hoping that with these changes, they look at all aspects, because it's not just racism that's a problem in our police force. It's also sexism. And it makes it so that victims of violent crimes that are women can't feel like they're safe. And whether you're a woman or people who are, LGBTQ plus, notoriously, there's a lot of cops here that are anti-gay. So it's almost like any sort of minority here is really not treated well. Yeah, it sucks. So, all we can do is keep moving forward, and and then with the Huxley stuff and all of that, I just I've had a lot. I just want to thank all of you guys that are adoptees or people that have gone and adopted children and reached out to me to share your insight. Specifically those of you who are Chinese adoptees, thank you for reaching out and telling me your experiences and how hard the story is for you. Thank you for all the people with autism that have reached out and said how heartbroken you are. Thank you to all the mothers of special needs children that have reached out and shared your heartbreak with me. Thank you to all of the people that have gone through international adoption and been really honest with me about how, even though you are glad that you went through the adoption, it's not without complications. I had one woman reach out to me, and literally tell me about how actually shady all the adoption industry is from top to bottom, and how the rehoming is really a lot more common than you would think. The sad reality is that earlier today I received a message from someone who actually said to me that they have been in process of going through an adoption in China for months, like over a year. And they said that since COVID, all adoptions have been put on hold. And now, because of what's happened with Micah, and because the Chinese government has made comments about it, they're like now going to be investigating what's going on with Huxley. And so people that were in process for adoptions in China are fearful now that they're going to close adoptions in China because of what happened with Micah. And so I feel like if that's the position that you're in, I'm really sorry. It sounds like there's been problems with Chinese adoptions for a very long time. And, you know, in one way you're sad because if that happens, you've lost that opportunity. But in the other breath, like, if we're seeing a pattern of children not being taken care of here, you don't want to keep bringing kids over here and have them continue to end up in these trafficked situations where they're passed from one house to another. Especially knowing that you've got so many kids that are already in the adoption, are already in the foster care system and are ready to be placed for adoption through the foster care system. And it's not an easy job to take on, like, a foster to adopt in the United States. But honestly, when there's such a large domestic need and so many kids actually age out in the foster care system, that, you know, we really need to start having these sort of conversations from a very, I would say, compassionate point of view as to why it is that we seek children out of countries. Why are we looking to other countries? Why are we so unsatisfied in our own lives and what we have here that we need to seek and find a child in another country to bring them home? What's in our hearts when that's happening? How are these adoption agencies promoting these? Why are the adoption agencies so quick to point people to the international children? I can tell you from my own experience, my husband and I think this is another part of it, is that I went through this process. My husband and I explored international and domestic adoption, and for a while. And I just want to say that, like, when we started looking at adoption, we were thinking domestic, and it was almost immediate that the agencies were pushing us to go international. I mean, we literally started at, we would like to look at domestic infant adoption, to, well, you would have to wait for a really long time, but let's go to China. I can get you a baby in China. And when you have agencies pushing you in that direction, it starts to feel less like you're adopting a child and more like you're brokering and paying for a child. And that doesn't feel right. And then you start reading about, there's a lot of money in international adoption. There's a lot of incentives. So the agencies will tell you that it's harder to get you have to wait longer for a placement with a baby, because, to be honest, like, even domestic infant adoptions are not without coercion and corruption. There's a lot of mothers that are simply coerced into giving their children up because of economics, or the fact that they're single, or because churches have shamed them to believe that, you know, they're sinners. And so you have to wait longer, and you're not always picked. And so they push it like, well, you can get a kid. You can buy a kid in there. You can get that child. China's got all kinds of kids. Go to China. And China has China has made it so easy to get kids that you only have to go for 2 weeks. So you go for residency for 2 weeks. Some countries make you stay for 5 months, 6 months, 7 months before you'll ever be able to adopt, because they want to make sure that you will assimilate and learn more about the culture of the child. But China fast tracks it. And so these agencies are like, go to China. You can go for 2 weeks. You can get the kid. It's just like that. It's so easy. There's so many babies. Now, if you go to China, yeah, when we started looking into the adoption process, we started to realize just overall how much it just didn't feel good to me. But that doesn't mean that if you've adopted that I'm shaming you. Just to me, it didn't feel good. But I would never, ever, ever, ever shame someone for adopting. I think the only thing that we can ever do is just really talk about the idea of paying for a child. Yeah, adoption's hard. And so with the international adoption, they're like, you can get a baby or you can get a 2-year-old. It'll be great. But there's a lot of questions about international adoption that are really, like in some of the countries, they've completely turned off adoption for healthy children. So with China, you can barely get a kid that doesn't have any issues. So, when you look at China, they'll say, well, you might end up with a child that has a heart defect or, but you can help that child better than they can help them there. And they really paint it like you're going to be this child's savior. That's really how they sell it to you. And so you get these parents thinking they're going to save a child and they get the savior complex. And it's not as simple as saving a child. Just because you're adopting a child doesn't mean you don't take on all that trauma of them being placed. You don't take on all the trauma of them leaving a culture. You're taking away their culture, their language, their food, everything, their families. You're basically cutting them off from their country. And it's also to a point of like, let's just be honest. Private adoption is really for the rich. It's not for the average person. And it's for people that can afford it. International adoption is $40,000. Easy. So, yeah, and so Russia cut off and stopped the adoptions because of the way that people here were treating the Russian children that were adopted. And, there's just a lot of issues with international adoption as a whole. Not to mention, one of the biggest factors that we decided not to seek international adoption is as we started looking into where these children are actually coming from, a lot of the kids that are in these orphanages aren't actually orphans. They have one living parent, maybe two. A lot of them are placed there because they simply can't afford them, or the orphanages will tell them like, well, we'll just take care of them. They can go to school here, and then the parents have no idea, and then the kids get adopted out. And a lot of times they're not orphans. They're actually like, they have living parents. And then the parent comes to the orphanage and finds that the child is gone and has left the country. And that's crazy to me. And a lot of times the orphanages will pay hunters to go into like places and get kids and pick kids and steal kids and put them in the orphanages. Because the demand for children and babies from the Western rich people is so high. Yeah, there's a lot of complications with international adoption. But anyways, long story short, I want to thank all of you guys for reaching out. And I think the whole system does need to change. And if you're going to show up and laugh at me in my live stream, you're just going to get blocked. Anyways. And then, so I think for long term, we just need to start having more open dialogues about, adoption along with how we treat people with disabilities. I feel like this story is just, it affects so many different, communities. Oh, you knew Floyd? I'm sorry for your loss, Gloria. One of our longtime friends is friends with George's fiance, and she said that he was a really nice guy. So, I feel like it's so many different things that are affected in this story. You have child exploitation, you have the dangers of international adoption, the dangers of the black market of rehoming in the United States. You have trafficking, you have children with disabilities, you have autism, you have so many different factors. Yeah, I heard that he had a Christian album, actually. He left a legacy of music. Yeah, I saw that Derek Chauvin actually worked with him for 10 years. It's crazy. It is crazy. When you see the video of him looking down at him and he's just so cold and callous, it's like he knew what he was doing, and that's what... Yeah, he did. He worked at a club with him for 10 years. So we'll have to see what happens. We are all mourning for George. George's family actually... George's family actually said yesterday that violence and looting and rioting just really, truly solves nothing. They asked people not to be violent in George's name. They asked people to be quietly protesting and grieving. And they asked people to, George would never have wanted that. I think if you abandon a child, you can be certainly under the microscope of having your other children removed as well. But I really don't know. Delaware County Sheriff's Office didn't say what they were investigating. All that it is that it's a multi. Yeah, if money exchanged hands for the rehoming of him, that is 100% illegal, and that is considered human trafficking. So if she received money for rehoming him, that's a huge problem. And that's a big part of these rehoming networks, is it's basically paying for a kid. It's gross. So yeah, that was all I really wanted to say. My hair is a mess. I still need to get my hair cut. I'm actually gonna see if I can get my hair done this week. I gotta contact my salon. My quarantine hair is out of control. I hope that the truth will come out. I think that whatever happens with this case is going to make a lot of changes. I think changes on YouTube are coming. The one thing that I'm hearing so much in the messages from you guys and in the comments is like how frustrated all of you feel with all of these family vloggers now. And I feel like, just because we don't like one family vlogger doesn't mean we have to hate all of them. But I think it's fair enough to have a conversation about child exploitation on YouTube. Everything done in the dark will always come to light. Exactly, Gloria. So, that's really all I have. I made an update about my legal case, and it was a really long year. I just want to say that. I really can't say very much about what happened, but I did have an attorney, and we were awarded a restraining order, so we're hopeful that this will sort of settle things down, but we know that there's still a long way to go. And my biggest takeaway from this whole experience is that no matter how you feel about someone and like how much you like a creator, we should always respect creators' privacy. We should always be respectful of how we speak about creators and how we talk to creators and how we engage with creators. And just because you're angry with a creator doesn't mean it's your right to send them death threats or call the cops on them, or for no reason. There are valid reasons, obviously, but for no reason. You know what I mean? And there's just so much that's going on with YouTube creators. It's scary. And like even with Micah and James, don't send them death threats. Please don't bully them. Don't do vigilante justice. Like you have to be patient. and just let this play out. And eventually, whatever happens, if nefarious things did happen, they will, it will be taken care of. Yeah, I mean, some of the comments to Micah are really bad. You just don't be that cruel to her. I mean, it's okay to be frustrated and want to know where Huxley is, but, don't wish death on her. Everyone's human. None of us are perfect. The best thing, honestly, that you can do is talk about it away from them. Be frustrated away from them. Talk to a friend about it, talk to other friends on Twitter about it, but don't yell at her about it. You know what I mean? Like, the best way to affect that is just not supporting her, More engagement. Unfortunately, the more you engage on her Instagram, the more it looks like it's a profitable Instagram account. The less engagement she receives is actually better for her, like worse for her brand. Correct. Like, don't ever wish harm on anyone, no matter what the situation is. Like, nothing is, even like someone that, like, just don't bully people, Like, even with what I went through, I wouldn't want anyone to be bullied. I don't want others to feel bullied. I've made mistakes, I've learned, but I also know that no one should have gone through what I've gone through in this past year. And it's really unfortunate that I had to take the steps I had to take. But, the good news is that I have a really good attorney now, and she has my back, and she's very thorough. And, we're hopeful that, this will help stop some of this behavior. But if it continues, we will file more restraining orders. We have a lot of evidence to have restraining orders against at least 3 other people. So, we could do that at any time. We're just hoping that. So, yeah. And if you're in any groups, just so you know, if you're in those groups that are contributing to what's happening to me, like, all of that stuff is getting sent to my lawyer. So, especially the threats that are being made in there, the monitoring and discussion about, like, targeting my videos and going after other creators, like, all of that is being documented, and that's all harassment. So don't harass other creators. Don't go after other creators. Don't try to, like, hurt somebody's business because you think someone is a liar or whatever your vendetta is. Even for the people involved, I just wish you guys all the best, truly. And I hope you guys find productive things to do. So I'm going to go, and I'm so emotionally drained. I can't even tell you. I'm sure all of you are feeling that way. So spend some time with your loved ones and your family. I know last night, my final statement will be this. Last night, I was really emotional about Huxley, thinking that it was his birthday and he might be somewhere where he doesn't know people and he's, like, could be alone. And I thought, I almost started crying thinking about him, maybe not having that love there on his birthday. And then I thought about my son, and then I just went into bed and I just cuddled him and I fell asleep with my son in my arms, because that was like, I just can't imagine as a mother ever getting rid of a child. So make sure you hug your children a little bit extra.